I'm really happy to introduce Mike Senecal, who's the director of our NorthStar ambulance program, and also the director of Franklin Community Health Network's emergency preparedness program. Mike's been at Franklin for 20 plus years, and in that role, he has served many of us well, especially in our community. Mike's a lifelong learner and a lifelong educator. He's taught classes at Bowdoin College, Colby College, Kennebec Valley Community College, and the Maine State EMS Conference. Mike is a EMS instructor coordinator. He is an advanced cardiac life support instructor, American Heart Association first aid CPR instructor, Wilderness Medical Associates International instructor, pre-hospital trauma life support instructor, emergency vehicle operator instructor, and he's also a firefighter level 2. This community is really lucky to have someone of this caliber and dedication to our communities. NorthStar serves over 71 towns, over 2,800 square miles, and they perform for Franklin County over 6,000 medical calls. And I'm really proud to introduce Mike to give us some education on what he does and what his service does. So.
I'm going to try to stand here to the side because I feel a little caged in. You know, my dad was a preacher, so sometimes I feel like I haven't rose to his level yet. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. Thank you for letting me come and brag about NorthStar, your EMS service that responds, as Becky said, 2,800 square miles from Livermore, Turner Line, all the way to Canada. So that's the same size as Delaware, actually a little bigger than Delaware that we do that. So a little bit about NorthStar. Now, NorthStar wasn't grown from a test tube at the hospital, so we'll give you a little history. Actually, the hospital's been in the EMS business, the ambulance business, for 27 years now. In 1995, there was some, Delta was the provider at the time. There were some concerns, so the citizens approached the hospital about taking over the ambulance service and running the ambulance service. So they took on the Farmington area service at that time. Then over the years, over the next 5 years, they were approached by, up at Sugarloaf, Ron Bourne and Pete Boucher came down to Nassau Hospital to take over the service up there. So they took over the Carrabassett, and then that was followed by the Livermore Community CES, Community Emergency Services down there, and then Phillips, and then finally Rangeley. So that all happened from 95 to 2000. And then 2000 for a few years, we knew we had to do something. So we had to get those services. We still operated them, with their historic values and the people. It's 5 different services, but trying to find some efficiencies to that. A lot of stuff was changing in the EMS world, reimbursement stuff, compliance issues. So, we had to meet a lot of regulatory requirements at that time. So we formed and took those ambulance services and combined them together, and that's where NorthStar came from. And so some of you remember, and I know Dave Roby came here years ago and talked about NorthStar when it first started, and he was our director there in the beginning, and really owe a lot to him and what he did. So NorthStar, again, we talk about reimbursement. We are subsidized from the towns and the citizens of the communities we serve. So we thank you for that, because our goal is, as we run that service, is to run it at a break-even level. So we do go to town meetings. You'll see it on your town report. There is a little line in there for the ambulance service. And again, we report our finances out to the advisory board, and we talk about what that subsidy be for the next year on managing the service. So, and over those years, we found a lot of efficiencies and have been able to bring that number down. So it's right now it stands about $625,000 a year for the ambulance service for the whole county and spread out. Now, the way that formula works, if anybody wants to, they will feel free to call me, and I can sit down and go through and talk about that. Or if you ever have any citizens, or there's any other groups that you're with, or town meetings, or anything, be sure to let me know, and I'll show up there and speak. Now, NorthStar, we like to think of ourselves not as a traditional ambulance service, like you call, we haul. We like to be a little more personal. But that's what we do a lot of. We have, we respond to emergency calls. Like I said, over 6,000 calls a year. We respond to non-emergency calls. That could be something as a lift assist. to help people. Now, lift assist, we'll go to probably 5 or 6 of those a week. Sometimes you get down on the floor, you can't get back up. To me, that's a super valuable community service that we provide. We do inter-facility transfers. So if you're too sick to stay at the hospital and you need that specialized care, we'll move you to the bigger facility as needed, and we'll even bring you back if needed and provide that service in the communities. We also respond to everything from backcountry rescue calls to mountain bike calls in the community. We have at least 50% of our staff are trained at the wilderness medicine level to provide that service in the backcountry, because in the rural area we have a lot of recreational activities, from snowmobiling, from skiing, from hiking, and when somebody gets hurt out there, it happens, and we'll respond in that capacity. We'll send a responder out there with our backcountry rescue team to start providing care and help move them out of the wilderness and get them to the ambulance and where they need to go. So we're really not just your traditional ambulance service. We do have a bike team too. We do blood pressure clinics, and right now we have gone over in the community, not at the hospital, over 600 COVID vaccines in the community. So in some of those, a lot of those are to people with transportation challenges, so we'll go to the house, we'll give them that vaccine, so that way they can be protected. And so some people go, well, I need the vaccine if they're at home and they can't get out. Well, family likes to come visit, so to give them that protection, we'll go to their home and give that vaccine. This week we're helping with flu vaccines at the school, at the fair. We'll soon be doing that, assisting at the school. So again, we're not the traditional ambulance service. We like to be out there in the community providing education, and not just there when you pick up the phone to call 911. So if you ever have any questions or would like us to go to any of your community events, or go give a presentation from some simple first aid to just talking about the ambulance like this morning, like I said, give me a call and we can make that happen. So the more people we have available, the better, or trained up and spread the message. Also, community paramedicine is another thing that's really blossomed over here. So what's community paramedicine? So this is our program. It's a national program, but we've been doing it actually for about 15 years here. One of the first ones in the state to start doing it. And that's where it's grown a long way. It was started out just as a wellness visit. Hey, my mom lives in Rangeley. My mom lives, on Long Falls Dam Road. She's alone. Can we stop in and check on them once a week? So we'll schedule that visit. Just to make sure everything's okay, make sure they got their medicine, nothing's out of order. And it has grown now that we work with physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, and we'll do scheduled visits to help with chronic medical illness problems. New diabetic, we'll go up there and train you how to use your glucometer, make sure you get everything correct. Or maybe you have a new congestive heart failure, CHF diagnosis, make sure you understand your medicine, that you're taking care of your weight, and we can report that back to the physician. Also, during COVID, we've handled a few outbreaks that way, trying to keep people at home, trying not to expose too many people. So we'll respond to the home and provide treatment there, education on COVID, or in the outbreak to help decrease some of the responses to the emergency room and give people that little bit of peace of mind. So, and those come all the way from general assistance. We do lab draws. We do give, maybe a breathing treatment at some of them. And then now we've started in the last few months tying in telehealth visits. So we're connecting with that physician at their office with an iPad. The paramedic will get there and do a full physical assessment, maybe draw labs, whatever the doctor wishes. Then we tie in with that televisit back to the office so the physician can see him or nurse practitioner, and then make an assessment and take, or manage their chronic medicine that way. So, especially during these trying times when people are scared to get out because of COVID or just transportation issues. That's, if you hear over and over again in this county, Lisa can attest this, transportation issue is a big problem in rural areas. So it's kind of just a little gap when we're out there to be able to do that and manage that. And that program continues to grow, and even with this recent COVID surge, we're looking at how can we do more if you're diagnosed with COVID, get out there just to go check on you, make sure you're doing okay, make sure you don't turn that corner, because at a certain point, patients want to turn that corner, that we can be there quick to help manage that aggressively. So awesome program. Right now we don't charge for that either. Eventually there may be some charges built in that in the future, years down the road, but right now it's just a service that we provide to go out there to help manage, illness in Franklin County. So pretty exciting stuff there. Again, any more information on that, just give me a call or talk to PCP. It's in all the Franklin Community Health Network's doctor's offices. And we're also partnered with Health Reach and Strong in Kingfield and Rangeley too to do some of those visits around the county. Some other exciting stuff that we have, we've been awarded, we're part of 2 grants. So the first grant is to try to get some more COVID shots, vaccinations into patients around the county. So we're going to be doing remote little vaccination clinics around Franklin County, trying to get more people vaccinated. That's our goal, more shots in arms. So we're going to be doing that over the next year. And of course, the big question I've been getting at the fair all week is around booster shots. So as more information comes out about that and figure out exactly how we're going to do it, people will be available to get booster shots at some of those vaccination clinics, but not yet. It's coming very soon. And the other grant is, of course, healthcare. There's a work shortage everywhere, no matter what business you're in, but healthcare really has been affected by as a whole. We have a grant, it's our second year of getting the grant, to recruit EMS professionals. And we have a fair amount that we can pay for somebody to go to EMT class, pay for their whole schooling while they're in there. So we'll be getting that information out shortly in the coming weeks around the county. And that's everything from EMT, and plus we're going to do first responder classes also. So now, that leads me into first responding. So now, NorthStar, we have 5 bases spread across this 2,800 square mile area. So when we have 1 ambulance staff 24 hours a day at Livermore, 2 ambulance staff 24 hours a day at Farmington, 1 during the daytime at Phillips, 1 at Sugarloaf, and 1 in Rangeley. But that's a lot of area to cover. And we couldn't do that without our first responder services, which also have a little shortage, and that's done by our fire departments. All the fire departments pretty well up Route 27. We have Farmington Fire, we have J, we have Livermore. They can get there and do some of the life-saving stuff when we're busy or that distance and cut some time and get somebody out the door. So it's just part of that whole healthcare team, and that way we can help support them and get more people trained up to be able to do that, to cover 2,800 square miles, that large area. So again, very important component. Or if we get really busy, they'll split off, drive our ambulances for us to bring them in. If we get a wreck with multiple injuries, help take care of patients and move them in. So just a super important aspect to our system as a whole. So anybody, if you know, who's interested in being in EMS, again, give me a call and we'll hook them up with this grant. You'll start seeing some more of that out there. But it's a great job. I've been doing it for 30 years now, pretty well since I was 18. I can't think of anything else I'd rather have done in the last 30 years. So it's been pretty exciting. All right. Make sure I get all my talking. Oh, just a little bit about COVID and how that's changed EMS a little bit. I think it's real important to talk about. So traditionally we have 2 people on the ambulance. So when we used to get a call, we would go right in, 2 people, we'd do an assessment on the patient, figure out what's going on. COVID has changed things over the last year and a half. So some challenges with that is we want to minimize exposure because we've got to keep our employees. I talked about employee shortage. So what we do is when we get there, if a person is, they have some signs and symptoms of COVID, we only send 1 person into the house at a time, fully garbed. So that's full PPE, that's an N95 respirator, mask, goggles, gowns, and gloves. And they'll go in and assess the patient. They'll see, how sick are they? And if they need the other paramedic, then or EMT, they'll call and tell them on the radio, hey, get garbed up, I need your help in here. If not, they'll manage the patient themselves. The other EMT will get the cot to the door and they'll load the patient. Sometimes people question why we're doing that. And that's, again, just to minimize exposure, try to preserve workforce, but we will gown up both people if we need to, if somebody is, that sick that we need 2 people in the back and then move them to the ambulance. So that has definitely changed things over the last. And then once we get back to the hospital, decon time is about 30 minutes. So the ambulance, once we get to the hospital, usually we clean it down before, but now if we have, well, you're suspected of COVID or COVID positive, that's an extra 30 minutes that truck has to sit there, airing out and getting deconned to go to the next call. So we've had to change some of our procedures that way, and keep the ambulance out of service a little bit longer while we're doing that. So some challenges we faced there. Any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about mental health challenges in your work?
So, mental health, and well, that's COVID, is definitely blowing up. You know, we get called for a lot of mental health calls and transport people to the ED and impact. So challenging, and part of that grant is we're addressing some training around mental health and seeing how we can use our community paramedicine too, because definitely is a growing problem and has mental health, and of course the opioid problem, you know, addiction and substance abuse just in general has definitely, you know, added a fair amount of call volume and challenges on scenes. A lot of times too, our goal is 20-minute scene time. We get out of your house, we want to be on the road and headed to the hospital in 20 minutes. These calls, sometimes you take an hour on scene, talking with patients, or, you know, even with the you know, opioid response. Not everybody is ready to take care of their addiction at that time. So trying to encourage them and move them into the right direction. So,
Mike,
yeah.
You talk about recruiting EMSs. Difference between paramedic, EMS, percentage of each in the organization? Is there a difference or a need?
Yep. So just real quick, so we have about 78 employees at NorthStar. We have like 44 paramedics. So paramedics is the highest standards, take almost a couple of years to get, and then you can get 6-month training as the EMT. So EMT level can do, you know, the basic life support, CPR, bleeding control, and then they can assist the patient with some of their own medications like nitro and aspirins if you have cardiac. The next level is advanced EMT. So advanced EMT can do everything the EMT can do, but now they can do an IV, they can do a few more medications, and they can do what's called an advanced airway, where they can take an LMA and they can insert it in your throat to breathe for you. That takes another 6 months of training, and then of course paramedic has a whole big drug box they can use, a lot more advanced airway maneuvers. They can use then monitor the defibrillator, the manual defibrillator, not an AED, so they can read all those rhythm strips there, and that's kind of the gold standard for paramedics. Definitely there's a paramedic shortage in the state. Most people, with the way they go through and become paramedics, is they become EMTs for about 6 months to a year, and then they either enroll in an advanced class and do that for 6 months or a year, and then a paramedic. So they usually take about 5 years to go through. Usually there's not a whole lot of what we call 0 to hero. You just start one day and take a paramedic class, and then you're a paramedic 2 years later. People usually move through that process over time because you are out there by yourself. You know, there's just 2 of you. And if you're 50 miles from the hospital, you know, you have to have some confidence, understand the way the system works, because it definitely is challenging. And that's where we do get some, I call them city medics that come up, and then all of a sudden they realize that the hospital is 55 miles away or an hour away. It changes their perspective on medicine. So then one great thing about EMS I love best is one of the few where it's one-on-one patient care most of the time. So I know a lot about the patient. I'm super involved with that patient care for that time period.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there any criteria to those who would be accepted to be grant funded for the EMT training? And if so, what is the policy around criminal background?
So the state takes criminal background questions on a case-by-case basis. You know, how long ago it was, how egregious do they feel that you've, how do you want to say it? Rehabilitated, thank you. That you've been rehabilitated and that you're not a threat to community. So they will take it, you'll have to go in front of the main EMS board, their little subcommittee, and you'll talk about, maybe it was when you're 21 and life was, wild and crazy, and now you're, a little older, 15, 20 years later, and realize that, yeah, no, that was a one-time thing, you rehabilitated, and they'll evaluate that again on a case-by-case basis. Now, criteria, we're hopefully will have enough people that we'll have to do an interview process. We'll have so many applicants. Last time that was not the case, but we're hopefully we'll get. So that's kind of where it stands.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, yeah, it's just handed up first.
Could you talk about your funding sources and how well you're doing with that?
So funding sources, so of course we bill insurances, Medicare and Medicaid are probably the biggest payers that we have, and then followed by private insurers. So, and then of course our tax subsidy to the towns that we serve are our funding sources. And right now, we're running close to that break even, but it is getting stressed now. A few years ago, we were doing rather well. We actually reduced our subsidy by about $300,000 a year. So that brought us down to about where we were. But now, as you can guess, prices are going up, especially around, our biggest expense is payroll. 67% of our budget is payroll. With the increase in minimum wage and all that, we've had increased pay. So that's really strained the budget. But the call volume has picked up some, and there's been some reimbursement improvement around Medicaid recently in a couple laws. So we gained, a couple $100,000 in revenue there. But to break even on an ambulance, you need about 1,500 billable calls to pay for that ambulance. An ambulance costs about $500,000 a year to staff a truck 24 hours a day. And you need 1,500 billable calls to be able to break even. It depends on what your care mix is. So definitely challenges surrounding that. We do not get reimbursed at the cost to deliver the service through Medicare or Medicaid. Especially because more rural you get, more expensive it is to deliver anything.
Do you anticipate the vaccine mandates to affect your staffing?
We are going to lose some quality people, unfortunately, due to the mandate. We have some good contingency plans in there. We're aggressively recruiting and using this grant. Right now, I don't see a major impact of the service that we'll be able to deliver. I'll be working that ambulance more in my office, my operations manager, while we're recruiting people. We have got several applicants in the last few weeks, but definitely is going to be a challenge over the next few months. So.
You talked about assisting people at home on falls and so forth. Are more people wearing these fall buttons? Are they effective? Is that what?
Yes, they are very, we encourage people. We have a lifeline program through NorthStar, so the lifeline that you can push. Now, there's a whole lot of other programs out there too. Now, there's ones you can use. If I fell out in the grass, I could push it. But Lifeline is pretty well dedicated to your house, so they do have some programs out there. So it's mobile with you. So no matter where you're at, you fall, and then you give them all your pertinent information, and they'll tell us where your key's hidden, how to get in the house, if there's a dog there. So if you have anybody that's you're concerned about, they are a super good tool. Because one of the sad things is you go pick somebody up at 9 o'clock the next morning because the neighbor found out they fell at 1 o'clock the day before. Just lucky that the neighbor found them. You get pretty sick. Floor's a cold place all during the night.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate
I guess I'm being
this.
named off.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, hold on.